thought your insights into the shift in the way the Marine Corps is thinking about training is a really important one, and I think it might lead to some follow-on comments by the gentleman sitting next to you. So where do you see down the road the Marine Corps must be in order to meet this, not only the great power competition piece, but also the highly technical aspects that continue to grow and emerge inside the Marine Corps and the Navy?
Yes, sir, thanks. Probably one of the biggest things that we're trying to do is, Major General Nick Ryan from the Australians has kind of put it best, with everything that's going on out there on the road today, we can no longer count on a technological edge. We certainly can't count on a quantitative edge, but what we're going to be able to count on, and we have to continue to be able to count on, develop and hone, is an intellectual edge that enables our people to beat anybody, anytime. Make decisions faster, deal with ambiguity, deal with time constraints, and make a decision faster than the enemy, whoever that person is, can make their decision and make it irrelevant. And one of the ways we're doing that is we realize we have to get out of the industrial age process of training educated Marines, and I think all the services are challenged with this. Something Frederick Taylor came up with many, many years ago, the efficiency expert. It's still with us. We're very much industrial age. It's efficient for pushing through large numbers. It is not effective for producing the kind of leaders we need. And it's not just leaders that are actually holding the rank, it's leaders all the way down to our most junior enlisted Marines who are going to be faced with a situation. There's probably going to be some sort of camera, cell phone, whatever, nearby, and that young Marine is going to have to make a decision very quickly, and it's going to have enormous impact. How do we make sure our Marines can deal with that type of future? So that's what we have to do, is change the way we train and educate our Marines to enable them to take intelligent initiative when it's required. That's the expectation, instead of wait to be told what to do with a lot of our, especially with our junior Marines. That's the basis for how we train and educate them until they start to have more time and experience in the Marine Corps. We've got to change that.
Yeah, thanks for that, Bill. I think for the other type commanders, that sounds pretty familiar to you. We know there's cultural and institutional resistance to letting go of something before the new thing is received, and oftentimes that causes all of us to not, well, if we don't take the risk in going there, you end up with what I would describe as a technological debt that you're just paying off the interest on the loan, and you're not really getting at the meat of it, because you can't afford to do both at the same time. But we've also, in the Navy in particular, had issues in the past by trying to jump too fast to a technology that wasn't ready. So from your perspectives, and I'll start, Brian, you're relatively new in this, but your domain has so much to do with the success of this capability down the road. What are you doing with the TICOMs and others to try to make sure the technology is mature enough and safe enough and protected enough to be effective?
Yeah, so thanks, and I appreciate your comments, because I think they do echo, and they will probably echo across the other TICOMs. For us, we have a couple different avenues that we're tackling, especially when it comes to trying to train. We have much the same philosophy that technology is only going to get you so far, but it's your people that are going to win the warfare here. And so we're taking some different tacks at how we get after that piece of it. I think really key to our success is our investment so far and where we are heading with very relevant learning as the Navy's backbone. We have a few of our ratings that are already in the pipeline for conversion under the Intelligence Specialist 25, for example. That content has been converted, and the first classes are going through that content conversion. We know that we have to get training to the tactical edge, that we can't really rely as much across all the spectrums of the various information warfare specialties of schoolhouse. It doesn't work. And so we're pushing towards that. The other thing that we're really stressing with our partners within the information warfare enterprise, from the resource sponsor and through the PEOs, is to change the way that we look at the Navy training plans and how we produce training materials. We need to virtualize that space. We need to get to reconfigurable, software configurable types of environments that we can train our sailors on. And that includes on the operational systems. One of the difficulties our sailors have is that when they get to their platform, whether it's a float or a shore, the system they have is an operational system, and there's not a lot of off-band capability for them to train on. So virtualization is a big key to that. You will probably, if some of you go to the Information Warfare Pavilion, you'll see a little bit of that in terms of what we're doing with Kane's training on that side, and so sailors can actually dial up the version, hardware and software that they have in a virtual space and train to it. We're bringing that to the fleet concentration areas. So virtualization is a big key to what we need to do. And lastly, and I'll really give it over because they've gone a lot further than we have, but for IW, we need to bring in live virtual constructive training of the environment. Our challenge is when you think about the cyber, EW, and information operations kind of space, and space, literally, those high-end capabilities you don't want to necessarily have out in the wild. And so getting from the high side where we operate down into a training network that is operating at a different level has been our major hurdle, and we're working through that right now.
Yeah, Rich and Bo, you want to comment on that?
Sure. Thanks, sir. So as the lead TICOM for the surface community, I look at training in two lenses. The first one I look at is the individual training, whether that's individual enlisted or individual officer. And then the second lens is I look at ship and watch team training. You pay for what you value. And if you look at the surface community since 2013, we put over $8.3 billion into our training accounts, whether those are individual training accounts or shipboard and strike group level training accounts. The surface community, I think, was probably the poster child for ready, relevant learning. Many of the things that we did back in 2013 and 2014, when we did the restoration of surface enlisted engineering training, when we built the quartermaster training continuum, we didn't know it was that called ready, relevant learning back then, but that's exactly what it was. It was to deliver the training that the sailor needs for the tour that sailor is going to do. And it started paying dividends, huge dividends for us, and then it really kind of transcended Navy-wide, and we're on track, and that makes a huge difference. If you look at what we've done within SWAS and CSCS since 2013, we've really gone to the Surface Training Advanced Virtual Environment. We have re-engineered over 70% of our courses under the Ready Relevant Learning construct. That affects over 114,000 graduates per year. So that's where we're going with our training. The second one the lens that I talk about is in the shipboard watch team training and the strike group training. In November of 18, we rewrote the Surface Force Readiness Manual, and we rewrote it to the Surface Force Training and Readiness Manual, where we really shifted the focus of how we were training the ships. We put the big T in ATG, the big training, and we put a little A assessment in ATG, where we started really focusing on the watch teams, with the primary goal of giving more time back to the commanding officers, so that after watch team certifications are achieved, the commanding officer actually has some time to focus in on what he or she thinks is their shortfalls through the basic phase. But then we even brought it one step further. If you look at what we're doing under Scott Robertson's leadership at SMITIC, with the advanced training, or under Dave Welsh's leadership, Strike Group 15, for the integrated training, we have made some significant changes in progress throughout the training continuum. Last thing that I want to talk about is if we're going to train in great power competition, we have to have the training devices that are at the same level. And if you get down to the waterfront down in San Diego and get to our CX trainer, that's the Combined Integrated Air and Missile Defense and ASW trainer, or the on-demand trainers, you will really see where we're taking training to the next level from a technical aspect. Thanks.
Yeah, so that answer applies in naval aviation. It's the same thing. So as you look all the way from new guy training, so sailor goes to A school right now. I mean, in the past, everything was pretty much classroom. Class would show up, this is the class start date, everyone would start the class, and then that class would then graduate. You could do that at whatever level you were talking about. So the training, and that system just really wasn't agile, and it didn't involve the technology that we now have available to us. So one of the things we learned through our whole readiness, return to readiness and reformation was, hey, we saw the value of going to outside industry and saying, hey, we don't have all the answers. Let's take a look at what the commercial industry has to provide to us. And so we've taken full advantage of that throughout all of our training. So like I said, one of the things, as a sailor shows up to A school, they're going to now find themselves with some VR goggles, and we'll walk through where you have a virtual instructor, where you can do reps and sets of whatever tactic or maintenance procedure or whatever else you're trying to learn, and you'll be able to do those reps and sets at whatever speed you want and how many you need to do. And so when you pass that curriculum, it's skills-based, you're going to move on to the next task. So pretty powerful stuff. The other thing we learned is we took some great advantage of the airline industry in approaches to safety. So how we're thinking about safety now, we're bringing that into sailors at A school and then reinforcing it as they go throughout their career. The other aspect of the squadron, so now we already have our sailors that are out there, they're in our squadrons, they're on our ships, is really how do we evolve that into that area as well. And so one of the things we've done, we just moved training closer to the flight line. Instead of, squadrons that have to, hey, I have to send somebody off to school for a couple of weeks. No, we're going to provide that training right there on the flight line so that you're still being a productive member of the squadron, but we're going to provide the training there. So a lot of the ready, relevant learning that Rich was just talking about, we're doing there as well. Within Sinatra, pilot training, this is probably where we've had the biggest, I'd say, change in the way we train. Everything from low-cost trainers to the VR goggles to we're doing a project now called Project Avenger that kicks off this summer, where we'll have instructors that about 5 or 6 instructors with students, about 10 to 12 students, and they're going to go through the entire syllabus of the flight training with that same core group, and it'll be more scenario-based as opposed to, hey, today we're going to go do acro and I'm going to learn how to do a loop. You're going to go through it and put it into syllabus-type basis, and really excited about its future, and we're teaming real closely with the Air Force in the development of that. At Fallon, and that's where really we learn to get good. Fallon's where we get good. And everything from, everybody knows about Top Gun, but our E2 school, our H-60 school, our electronic warfare school, our integrated air wing training with Strike, and then, of course, we've added a new course, which is Maritime ISR, because of the nature of the way we fight. And that not only is it the schoolhouses and the training that we provide at Fallon, but a lot of it is the ranges. So our challenge right now is making sure as we take this training into the future, it's not just the insertion of the technology, but it's making sure that we can train on realistic ranges with the realistic tactics that we have. And so that's one of the big pushes you'll see throughout this year's budget request is the expansion of the ranges up in Fallon so that we can continue to take advantage of the things that this whole panel just talked about.
So, Bill, you mentioned in your opening here shifting from an industrial model into something more modern. And a lot of that is enabled by data. Sure. I'd like to hear from each of you how and we'll just go right down the line here, how you're incorporating data into the methods by which you train and educate, by methods by which you employ your capabilities in the fleet, and how is that improving, and what can be done, what can folks here from industry take away from the problems you're having, or where you could see greater capability down the road if you had a better understanding of the data that exists out there for you. So I'll start with you.
Yes, sir. I would answer not well. and that's something we absolutely need to get better at, and we're working on it. All the way from entry-level training, from the standpoint of gathering data on them, from how they're doing, what they need to do better, and how to get after that, to the training systems we use, how do they contribute to readiness, how are the units actually using them and contributing to readiness, and then in our collective training venues at 29 Palms, we're trying to develop that facility to enable us to have an NFL-like ability to look at absolutely everything an exercise force is doing, play it back to them for after-action purposes, but then identify trends and figure out what we need to fix, trace it back to the source, and fix the source so we don't continue to make those mistakes. To me, that's the definition of a learning organization. We do some of that right now, but nowhere near enough. That's what we're working on, sir. Yeah, great. Brian?
Yeah, so we embarked last year on what we call the C5I campaign plan. And it really has involved all the partners up here as we set forth to try to look at equipping issues from a fleet perspective, afloat, all the way back to the shore side of the house. We knew we needed to get after data and harness it in the way that we haven't harnessed it. We invested through Naval's FOD into a program we call Raven, and that's really close to being operational, but it's now bringing in about 30 different data sources into a data lake that we're now using Tableau and some other methodology being able to pull out. Now that was really focused at one area. That was focused at getting our modernization done on time, partnered with Rich and his efforts on the maintenance side of the house. So ships came out of the maintenance periods with the best equipment that they could have. Their SOTs and SOVOTs, their system-to-systems operational tests, and their SOVOTs completed. What, though, that has led to is we have started pulling and unpacking that through this campaign plan, following very much the perform plan methodology that all the TICOMs are using at various levels. We started being able to unpack where we had personnel issues, personnel mismatches in the distribution, and then all the way back to training deficiencies. And so this idea of using data to get after these kind of equipping things, right, just readiness, have led us to much more exploration of the area, and we're starting to get down now into the individual information warfare specialties and finding where we have deficiencies in the training and the documentation, the manuals, and other things. And so it's leading us down a path that I think was a little bit unexpected, but we're very much welcoming it, and it's helping improve readiness.
Great. Rich?
So, following 2017, we had a comprehensive review, and then we had a SecNav readiness review. And out of that, 111 distinct recommendations. Of those 111, 47 applied directly to surface warfare in our community. So the question is, how do we know we're getting better? Or how do we know that we even move the needle at all for all the stuff that we said we were going to do, and then all the stuff that we did under the whole man training equip domain? So I'll just use a couple of examples of where data is actually informing us and how we know that we're getting better, or how we know that we've moved the needle, or potentially have even moved the needle. The first one I'll talk about is the equip side, which you can describe whether it's equipped, whether it's maintenance, ship depot level maintenance, but we do know this. 2 years ago, in 2018, 25% of our Arleigh Burke class destroyer C&O availabilities finished on time. That meant 75% of them finished late. Given that DDGs make up 40% of all of our C&O availabilities, we decided as a Navy and as a community to actually focus in on DDG C&O availabilities. We called it Perform to Plan Surface. The only way that we could get after that was looking at data. And all the things that we said we were going to do for C&O availabilities, they're what we did and didn't move the needle. Well, looking at all the data, if you look at the DDG C&O availabilities for 2019, 43% of them finished on time, and right now we're projecting 76% of DDG C&O availabilities will finish on time for year 2020. That's real data, and we were able to move that needle because of the data. How do we know if we're getting better in our Tier 1 and Tier 2 certs? We have data that says, hey, for it's a 0 or 1, we're not going to deploy ships if they're not fully certified. We've held to that. But now we're actually tracking what our ships scores across the OFRP, whether it's in the basic phase, the advanced phase, or the integrated phase, and we're tracking all those certifications. We're doing the same thing in the manning world, where we started out 2 years ago making sure that all our FD&F forces were at 92.95 and our deploying forces were at 92.95. We quickly shifted to ensuring that our forces were at 92.95 prior to the start of Comp 2X, and then we shifted and said we're going to make sure that our forces are at 92.95 prior to the beginning of SWAT. And we have the data that now shows that there is a direct correlation to the ships, number one, entering into those advanced and integrated phases with less CAS reps and more manning and better performance. So that's where we're going. The last thing that I used for data is one of the things that we said was going to move the needle was the afloat bridge resource management workshops with post-major command CO mentors. And as a matter of fact, I remember when you were vice chief, I sat in your office in March of 2018, and I said, I think that this is really what is going to move the needle on the surface force. But how do we know? Well, my safety officer just brought me down a stat. We've done about 64 afloat bridge resource management workshops in the Pacific Fleet. 43 of those have had a post-major command CO mentor. And of those 43 ships, not a single one has had a Class B or Class A mishap since they've done that training. And there's only been one ship that's had a Class C mishap. That's a fact. Is it causal yet? We don't know. We don't have a large enough data set, but it's all about data, and that's what we're tracking now to see if we're moving the needle. The last point that I'll make is one of the things that we started from the submarine community is that they really focus in on near-miss and HAS reps. And they, over the last decade, have shown if their near-miss reports go like this, their Class Alpha and their Class Bravo mishaps go like this. And that's all data. Where we took their programs, we expanded it, we did it, and we have the exact same curves. And again, it's all based on data. Thanks.
I love data. It's just awesome. So I was fortunate that because Secretary Mattis took a look at strike fighters' readiness across all the services a couple of years ago and said, hey, we got to get after this. That started the whole performance to plan initiative. And what it really was an initiative that changed culture and drove results. And the decision-making was driven by data, data-driven decision-making. It takes away, I think this, I think that, the person with the most stars wins okay, you thought that, so this is what we're going to do. Data don't lie. And so then it really gets into, and as we evolved and went through our readiness recovery and developed naval sustainment strategy for aviation, it really got into, okay, data for what purpose, and what are the metrics we are going to measure, and then do those metrics drive the results that we want to achieve? And does it, drive the behaviors that are healthy and sustain, if you will, a good ecosystem? So and what you're hearing through all of us is that reliance on the data and data-driven decision-making is because we've embraced this approach. The other thing that it's great for, I think, is the alignment. I send out every week an Air Boss report card that says here's where we are for every single type model series of our airplanes. And we talk about our manning levels and everything else. And that alignment, because the data don't lie. It has it all the way from the squadron level all the way up to the CNO, can take a look at that data and know exactly where we are. I'll tell you the other thing, and what really encourages me isn't just rearward looking data. That's just information, that's just a report card of where you are. But the key, I think, is as we start really applying the predictive data that's taken a look at history, but also kind of takes a look at the future and says, here's what I predict your readiness is going to be, or your manning is going to be, or your safety is going to be. based upon the activities. And that's where we're really finding, at least through that leadership, that alignment of that data, we can get in front of a lot of the issues that we're facing. So that is a big piece of our business as TICOMs now, and I don't see that going away anytime soon. I see it just continuing to evolve.
Great. Well, the panel is about manning, training, and equipping. Rich, I'm going to put you on the spot here. You only get to pick behind one of those three doors. Which of those three topics is causing you the greatest amount of continued gray hair growth as you view the surface community in the future? Where is the tension greatest for you?
What do you think I'm going to say?
All three, of course.
Manning. For me, it comes down to, we've made incredible progress on the train and the equip side, and I think we have good momentum there. Now, on the train and the equip side, that can be taken away in 1 year of 10 continuing resolutions. So I'm going to be honest about that up front. It's nothing that I haven't testified in front of the HASC about or with my office calls. Continuing resolutions kill any initiative momentum that we make. More importantly, though, it affects the manning side the hardest. And as we look at looking for savings across the portfolio, there's really three places that you can go and get those big numbers. You can go get those big numbers by descoping C&O maintenance availabilities. You can go get those big numbers by reducing steaming days and fuel, and you can get really big numbers when you start talking about reducing the manning on ships and squadrons and submarines. I think that 2017 has shown us that is foolhardy if we go after the manning profile. As a matter of fact, we just spent the last 2 years increasing the denominator for our billets authorized for our ships. It does us no good to increase the denominator if we then don't buy to a high enough percentage of the BA so that we are then able to man our ships at 92% fit, 95% fill across the OFRP and not just for deployment. I think if we do anything less than that, then we're lying to ourselves to say that we've increased manning on board their ships if we just increase the denominator and then don't buy to that. So that's where I think the biggest tension is going to be.
Okay, Brian, how about you?
So I'm not going to cop out and say all three, but I think the one that causes me the most tension is probably the training piece. I think the training piece is the great denominator or equalizer between equipment shortfalls and manning shortfalls. We have a lot of technology that's coming into our fleet. We also have a lot of technology that's already there. And there's always a tension between how you bridge those gaps, right? Because we have the fleet we have, and there's a new fleet coming, and how you bridge those. To be honest, compared to a lot of Rich's problems and Bill's problems when you've got to get ships to sea, I don't own all. I help influence the pieces and parts of the information warfare capability on their platforms, but I don't own that piece. The part that I actually have ownership and ADCON over is ashore, and we are always a little bit behind. I mean, that's the Navy's manning model. So I don't see a lot of great growth in that side. So the piece that I think that's going to help solve that is really getting our training better. It's going to take a little bit of technology investment. It's going to take a little people investment. But being and getting and using data to get us more into that predictive place where Bullet mentioned is where we need to be. Right now, across a lot of the IW capabilities, our training tends to be OJT, a little ad hoc, and we're working on normalizing that across our enterprise.
Okay. Boyd, you want to comment?
Yeah, so not to be repetitive, I kind of break it up into short-term and long-term as far as what's making my head hurt. On the short term, I'm with Rich. It's manning, and it's distributable inventory, and it's with trying to address that. Real quickly on that, and I'm not going to anchor here, is we've developed an aviation maintenance experience, Amex score, and that is helping us put the right person in the right, with the right skill sets and the right proficiency, and really make our detailing smarter. But that's some of the things we're doing to address those near-term, head-hurter manning issues. In the longer term, and it's not really so much the equipping, it's the sustainment of the new systems that we're bringing online. So as I look at naval aviation, Ford-class aircraft carriers, MQ-25, E2C to E2D, unmanned systems with Triton, and I can go on and on of all the capabilities that are coming in within the next decade into naval aviation. So it's not that they're coming in that has me concerned, but it's our ability to be able to sustain them such that those platforms that we train to them, that we man them properly, and that we're able to sustain them from a readiness standpoint.
Great. Hey, Bill, I want to turn back to you here. You have a tendency, I think, where you're working now to look into the future much further in terms of new capabilities, new technology. What do you got to prepare the Marine Corps to do? What disruptive technologies do you see out there that can help you change the way, as you just described earlier, how the Marine Corps has to shift its focus? And you already heard from these three gents that they're in the same position. Do you have any insights you could provide on the technology front that would help us understand where to focus?
Yes, sir. It goes back to your previous question. It's data. One of the challenges we have is in the Marine Corps is we have a lot of folks with very strong opinions that aren't based in fact. And we have to have the ability to show people objectively, no, you're not as ready as you think you are, and here's how we can help you to get better. And so we have to develop that ability to show people, gather the appropriate data, and then show people without the ability to argue about it. Here you go. This is where you currently stand. Because one of the challenges I'm concerned about is we have a claim for readiness, how ready we are, and based on things that I see on our training environments, maybe not. We have to be able to prove that one way or another. Sure.
Yeah. Do you see this training in the data? Do you have the right tools? Or do you have the right skill sets? Are there areas that you're trying to focus the Marine Corps on to get after not only developing the data, but being able to use that data for predictive analysis and the things that some of the other gents...
Very much work in progress, sir. Yeah. We have some talent in that regard. We're looking for more, and especially from industry, how they can help us. But it's very much work in progress, sir.
So I'm going to turn to the audience here and look for some folks to step up to the mics if you've got a question. And okay, great. Brian, I see you talking or walking.
Good morning. Thank you, gentlemen. Admiral Mullen, my question is for you. Many people believe that great power war is going to bring integrated multi-carrier operations into a much closer focus. The chances we have to practice that generally seem to be whenever we even get two aircraft carriers together at one time, or three sometimes. Have we put more money against a shore-based environment, a virtual environment, or what have you, where multiple carrier strike group staffs and airwing staffs can come together and think through the first 50 things that will bring off multi-carrier operations?
Yeah, great question. The way you brought it up, first I'm going to say it happens at different levels. So what CSG 4 and 15 do as part of the Comp 2 exercises is really competitive exercises, is really work that at a strike group level. We're now taking those into fleet exercises where we're exercising our fleet commanders in their C2 of multiple strike groups. At the tactical level, you're absolutely right. Most of that only happens by chance whenever we're able to get those forces together. We are doing more of that through simulation and as well increasing our ability to do that at Airwing Fallon so that works together. So I think from a concept, we're there. I think we need those more reps and sets, and now to be able to do it holistically from the fleet level all the way down to the strike level. But as far as the doctrine that goes behind that, that's pretty firm, and I think we know how to do that.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah, but to build off Brian's question for all of you really is, do we have the environment that allows you to do what you just described well enough across the entire force so you can exercise at the fleet level virtually or in some other augmented reality?
I think we're getting there. And so we've placed the investments to be able to do that more as we get into the constructive part of LVC. That continues to improve. Do we have it holistically now where his ships and my airplanes are seeing the same threat profile at the same time to be able to address it? In some cases, but not to the degree that we really need. But we're on that path. And so that gives me really good hope that we're moving in the right direction.
So we have to move in that direction because the weapons that we are fielding or going to field within the next 5 years have now outpaced our ranges. So we can then not train to the full capability of those weapons because our ranges aren't large enough. So the only way that you can, and I'm talking whether it's SM-6, Maritime Strike Tomahawk, conventional prompt strike, or hypersonics, the only way that you can now do that is through live virtual constructive. So as we develop those types of systems, we also have to develop the training systems that support us moving forward.
You want to comment?
I would just say we're still lagging a little bit on the information warfare side to get into the places where they've moved forward. We've on one aspect in terms of realistic environments and the physical environment, we're well invested there, and that's working well. But as I mentioned at the very beginning, integrating some of our capability, which is the high level, into some of the capability that's at the next level down, those are places that we're making investments right now and looking to bridge.
Okay. Yes, sir, go ahead.
Good morning, gentlemen. Massacre Sergeant Hess from OMF. So my question is to the whole panel. So I've read the CPG, I've read the documentation from the CNO in regards to integration, and then coming out of the keynote this morning, they talked specifically about how integration is the only way in order to get after the future fight, and integration between the Marine Corps and the Navy. But when you look at the tactical level of the Marine Corps and even the number of fleets within the Navy, we're still operating off of separate and distinct teams. And we had come together for maybe one exercise a year, and it's generally if that exercise doesn't conflict with a major exercise from the other service. My question to each of you as leaders within your respective areas is, what is the Navy and the Marine Corps doing to combine the TEEPs for the Navy and the Marine Corps to get after true integration, to ensure that when the Marine Corps is on a ship, it is integrated into all aspects, and when an event happens, it's no longer a afterthought. It's from the jump, we need to integrate across the board, across our TEEPs, into all of our events.
Bill, you want to kick that off?
Yes, thanks, Master Guns. One of the things that you well know, and I'm sure everybody here on the panel in the room here knows, that making kind of changes required by the CBG and the things the CNO put out, you don't make that kind of change overnight. The Commandant's scope is over the next 10 years. It's not just the time that he's in service. All his leadership, I've heard him very, very clearly. We're looking for every opportunity we can. We're making the lead turns that will help the entire ship of the Marine Corps turn and get more navally integrated. But it's very much, as I've said before, a work in progress. You and I probably won't see the results. They'll kick us out before we actually do, but they're coming soon. Probably in the next 3 to 5 years, you're going to see a heck of a lot more integration. The Marines that work for you are going to see a heck of a lot more integration than we've had in the past, because we've got to break out of the model of the last 16 to 18 years of fighting. And it's not easy to do that. There are a lot of people that are very fixated on that, and as you've seen with force design, the Commandant's not afraid to gore sacred cows, and so that's what we need to do.
From my perspective, I'm going to start really at the tactical level, where we're making some progress in integrating the teams, and that's currently on the baton ARG as it's deployed right now. A lot of conversations with Lieutenant General Reynolds, the Deputy Commandant for Information, with me, and also with Vice Admiral Matt Kohler, who's the N2, N6, or equivalent on the OPNAV staff. As we pushed forward the baton ARG, we Navy leaned in and provided an information warfare commander, kind of the similar construct that we have done at the strike group level, to pilot it to see what we could do. At the same time, with the Marine Information Group detachment that's assigned to the MU, working with Commander Don Wilson, who's there now, we've integrated the teams between the MIG detachment and the ARG information warfare team in a way that we're now figuring out how we work across that space in information warfare. That's a very tactical level thing that we're doing as we speak at a kind of a higher level, and it's probably one to lead turn to go listen to the panel that has both Vice Admiral Kohler and I think Lieutenant General Reynolds on, but all the way up to the resourcing level where we're looking at JADC2, the Navy Tactical Grid, and how we're going to do information warfare at the operational level within a mock, for example, and how we might blue-green that piece of it. So lots going on in our space to try to get after exactly what you're saying.
Next question.
Hi, good morning. Megan Eckstein with USNI News. Vice Admiral Miller, you mentioned the aviation report card that you have. I wondered if you could give a few examples of specific instances where you were able to take that data you receive and maybe reallocate resources or otherwise make decisions to boost readiness. And then for the other panelists, I wondered if there's any other efforts within your communities to try to obtain unit-level readiness information up to your level. That way you can make decisions.
Yeah, thanks, Megan. So last year I was sitting here, where Brian is. It's where I was sitting last year in this panel, and we were talking about this new thing, naval sustainment strategy, and how we're going to use data and how are we going to make change. We talked about culture and how hard it is to change that culture. Today, sitting here on the same panel, we have 340 more aircraft that are flying today that weren't flying a year ago. That's the power of data and data-driven decision-making, and it's making results. So to your question on specifically, give you an example, the initial data set came out and said, hey, here's the two levers that you're going to have the quickest results in as you start this readiness push. One is your AIMDs, your eye-level intermediate maintenance. You need to do improvement there. And the second is you need to improve the manning at your squadrons. Then the data said, so we started off in that direction. We continued that analysis, and the analysis then said, hey, even if you do that, and this was specifically for strike fighters, they said, you are not going to get the 80% mission capable rate in your strike fighters. And that's when we all of a sudden, because of that, made the decision to go ahead and do reform basically across all the tenets of naval aviation through our squadron level, our intermediate level, our depot level, the way we do engineering, the way we run operations center now and make decisions. All of that was because of the insights provided to us through data. And the results are, we're at 341 Super Hornets, and we're at 340 more airplanes flying today than last year. So it really is if you will, a testament to the power of data-driven decision-making.
And I'll give you one example. As we went down the performance plan surface road, we had two key metrics there. The first one is ship start to availabilities on time and only availabilities on time. That was number one. And then number two was the work that we said we were going to do during the availability we do. Because I can get every ship out of an availability on time. All I have to do is just descope the work halfway through the availability, right? So I'm just going to give, I've got so many, but I'll give you one. So we do a series of readiness evaluations throughout the OFRP cycle. One of those readiness evaluations is called the TISRA, which is a Total Ships Readiness Assessment. And that has to happen during the deployment. And it happens prior to package lock. We know the data shows us if you don't do the TISRA, you come out of the availability rate. It's not rocket science in a lot of aspects, but we had never looked at that before. We had never actually gone back and said, hey, did ship A who came out late, did they do everything that they were supposed to do until we went under this very formal construct of perform to plan. So that's just one example.
Sure.
Information technology can be a great force multiplier, but it also has risks if one relies on it and it is not available. And what I'd like to hear your views on if a competitor such as the PRC, for example, were to destroy or blind our satellites, interfere through cyber and electronic warfare with our information capabilities, where are we with regard to having the equipment and the training for our forces to continue to be combat effective?
So I'll go after that one. I think what makes our Navy the premier Navy in the world is the way that we command and the way that we've commanded over the last 240 years. And it's that singular aspect that gives us an edge in any environment. And our embrace of mission command is what makes the United States Navy the premier Navy in the world. So if in a future conflict the satellites and the GPS systems and the comm systems are destroyed and no longer available to our commanders, I have every faith that our commanders will bring the fight to the enemy and we'll win, because we practice that every single day.
I'd like to talk about also, because to me what it comes down to is education. You've got to get people that intuitively have the ability to make decisions quickly, especially when conditions change, especially when technology you may have gotten relied upon in training doesn't work anymore for whatever reason. Instead of this stunned mullet response of what do we do now, it's, okay, let's do something different, let's get after it. And it gets inside Boyd's OODA loop so that we make decisions faster. And that's technology independent. Technology can help us great, but if we rely on it too much, it becomes a crutch that will probably be taken away from us at the worst possible time.
Yes, sir. Hi, Jeff Zizalowitz with Navy Times. I'm just going to pick this up here. Sorry. This is for Surface Boss and Air Boss. A big piece of the... Air Boss. What's that? Oh, God, yeah. Guess he's the civilian over here. Sorry. Air Boss. Anyway, a big part of the return to great power competition seems to be manifesting with increased training and operations in the Arctic. So I was wondering if you guys could talk about, are you having to train your personnel differently to go up there? And, are you having to, prepare ships or jets or tweak anything in terms of the equipment side, to work back in the Arctic when for decades the Navy wasn't really up there?
So from the surface perspective, our ships are designed to operate in any arena of the world, and that is still true today, as it was back in 1987 when I operated up north of the Arctic Circle on a ship that was built in the 50s called USS Charles VADM CDG-2. So our ships are designed, they continue to be designed, we hold those specs to be able to operate in those environments. But in the same respect, we have to make sure that our crews are able to operate in those environments. We just conducted an exercise last year, I think it was November, right? What was the name of it? I can't remember the name of it. Where we brought a carrier strike group, the TR carrier strike group, up north and operated to prove that once again we could do it. But not just on the West Coast, we also did it on the East Coast. Gene Black, when he had Harry S. Truman, when he did that split deployment, he went out for a couple months, came back. He went up to the high north. And I've actually got pictures of him on the flight deck where snow is coming down, and those aircraft and those ships perform superbly.
Yes, so Jeff, I think my answer is the same as far as the aircraft goes. No real changes to training. It's really the exposure. And, I keep reminded of, Admiral Black, Harry S. Truman, dynamic force employment. It had been a long time since really we've taken carrier strike group and operated in those environments. And so that we learned a lot from that, and I think kind of back to the future, we're going to apply that for future and as we have more opportunities. But our equipment, our airplanes, they're there. It's our experience working in those environments and how we fight out of those environments that I think, we're just going to continue to explore.
Next question.
Sir, Mark Heinrich, former Navy supply officer. Question maybe for General Mullen. I've learned that you guys are instrumenting 29 Palms to get more data off of the range. You've got a big investment coming in wargaming at Quantico. It seems like those initiatives could benefit your peers at the table. Maybe OPNAV N7 has to work in integrating authoritative databases, but do you think that these initiatives in the Marine Corps could help your peers?
Actually, in some cases, they're ahead of us. So I'd like to say, yes, it can help them, but that's one of the things that I've noticed, both with the Army and the Navy. They're ahead of us to some degree, and it's not just 29 Palms where we need to instrument. We're trying to develop the mobile ability, because maybe that's more important is to do it at home station, both during the training to get ready for deployment, and then for readiness evaluation exercises in particular, how do we help them instrument so that we get more objective in how we evaluate our units. Anything along those lines, if for some reason I was wrong and they're not ahead of us, which I doubt, we're willing to help.
So,
Rick Easton, retired SWO, and this question is mainly for the SWO boss, but maybe other panel members will have some input as well. I had the great fortune recently to be aboard an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, and during lunch in the wardroom, they described the fact that they were facing 21 different mission areas that they were supposed to be proficient and competent in. And I know from interaction when I was on active duty and since with the submarine force, they often very specifically tailor missions to a deployment schedule or deployment objectives, which kind of limits perhaps the total number of missions they have. But when it comes to peer competitors, I think the combatant commanders probably have an expectation that we can execute all of them. So my question is what are your concerns vis-a-vis this now 21 mission areas that we have, the competency that we have in them, and perhaps more importantly, what you see as adjustments you might like to make, particularly to the training, but the man, train, and equip?
Right, so it's 21, it's 22 if you're a DMD ship, right? So I have to provide the number 3 commanders with combat-ready ships and battle-minded crews. That's my job as the TICOM, and we're doing that. We had the same discussion almost 2 years ago about, hey, do we really have this right? And quite honestly, I got a bunch of captains around the table who commanded at the 05 and the 06 level, and I said, do we have our training right? And quite honestly, everybody said, no, it's great. I said, wait a minute. Here's all the things that made me upset when I was in command that I did not like, and we have the opportunity to change. And that's how we got from the Surface Force Readiness Manual to the Surface Force Training and Readiness Manual. Okay? We were in a lockstep way that we trained our crews, but we really, I don't think that we were very efficient about it. Only in the surface community did we train and certify the most junior and inexperienced crew members in a mission area. Why? Because all the senior members were on the training teams, right? You remember that, Rick, from your time in. So we shifted that paradigm and we flipped it on its head. And that's when I was talking about earlier. We put the big T in ATG training in the little A. So ATG comes on board now. That's a flow training group. And they don't come on board with the check, the clipboards and go, you did that wrong, you did that wrong, you did that wrong, and then get it to the crew and go fix yourselves and we'll be back. They come on board and they train. They write all the drill sets. They impose all the drills. During that, they train. If a ship shows that, and the training teams, we don't even worry about. So that means you can have the most experienced senior crew members standing watch, because I want to certify that they can fight the ship. We're getting to watch team certification in about 10 or 12 weeks. Then I put I think it's a 4-week CNAV right in the middle of the basic phase so that we can reset the material readiness of the ship. And during that time, ATG is training the training teams, and when they come out of that, then we certify the training teams. The ships, we've only got 17 ships through this new moniker on both coasts. But the ships are finishing their certifications at about week 18 out of a 24-week training availability, 25 weeks if you're a BMD ship. That means we're getting back to the commanding officer anywhere from 4 to 6 to 8 weeks so they can focus in on what they believe they need to go into the advanced phase of training or the integrated phase of training. So we've already done that. The feedback that we're getting is tremendous from the commanding officers, that will have really moved the needle. But it goes back to almost one of the very first questions that were asked. What is the data telling us? The data, initially, we don't have it all, is telling us we're in the right direction.
Yeah, if I could add, I want to add just a little bit from the aviation side because it's very similar, whether it's the missions or whether it's multi-mission airplanes. I'll tell you, the biggest difference maker is high-fidelity simulators. And the fact that we can get reps and sets against and flying the tactics that in a simulation environment, that where I'm not showing my hand of my tactics, it's what allows us to be good every day, as opposed to just when I have those forces and I can all of a sudden get that one, training opportunity. We can get those reps and sets, and that LVC future, that roadmap to LVC is really going to be a difference maker for us. Already has been.
Thank you very much.
Roto,
I'm a retired independent guy. Question about the data. There's been a lot about data discussed here today. When you look at the sustainment side of the equation, if you look at the painted glass that's important to OID, Naval, everywhere, there's Venn diagrams that have a lot of the same things, but then some very nuanced and different things that inform how they behave. We talked about the fact that we're growing our way into the predictive side. What is being done to establish a tighter data governance and some sort of a holistic strategy that ensures that we're not just building data analytic tools that inform one circle or a couple of that Venn diagram, and how are all of them in sync, and how are we going to do that?
Yes, so our governance structure for me is through the Naval Aviation Enterprise. And so that's in conjunction with my Marine Corps counterpart, General Rudder, and Vice Admiral Peters at NAVAIR, and we kind of bring that and have those exact same kind of questions on are we measuring the right stuff? Are our standards, interoperable? And then where are there opportunities to maybe evolve into another IT system and get rid of that legacy system? And so all those discussions are pretty much part of my NAE drumbeat.
Same respect, my governance structure is, we call it the SWE, which is the Surface Warfare Enterprise. Kind of going back to the data, the first thing that you have to ensure is you collect it. So as we looked at OFRP, I love the OFRP cycle. Remember, the OFRP cycle is a predictive presence model. It provides presence. It's not a warfighting model. And the reason why I like it is because I have a maintenance period, and then we have a basic phase training period, which we do not short. There's many reports that, we've been shorting the basic phase for our ships. Now, in the last few years, ship gets 24, 25 weeks, they get them all. And I also have the data that shows that that's the case. And then, and then we have the deployment and the sustainment phase, but there's a bunch of requirements for the sustainment phase, because since you mentioned that, you need to maintain your watch teams at a certain level. We weren't actually collecting that data. And so what we found out is if we actually pulsed a ship and said, hey, is that ship ready to forward surge again? 2 years ago, we'd say, well, no. And the reason why it was no is because we weren't collecting the data. Now we are. We actually had to modify our training systems to actually input that data in there, so then we can run the reports and do the analysis on it. And now we are doing that.
Hey, Brian, for the last several years, we've talked a lot about the promise of artificial intelligence and machine learning, and part of that promise was that we believe that it would reduce our manpower requirements on large watch floors and persistent ISR, those sorts of things. What's the truth on the ground? Because your community sees this probably more than anybody else right now.
Yeah, so I think we're still a little bit nascent in bringing all that together. On the intelligence side of our business, through a lot of investments at the OSD level and down, there are some things that are out there that are starting to help nug through some of the manually intensive ways of looking at large caches of video and other things like that, making improvements there. But I think we're really at the nascent stages of AI machine learning. One area that we have had some really good success, I'm going to bring an oceanography piece, my other background. A couple years ago, we thought as we put ocean gliders out into a plug to go look at the ocean gliders back here. But when we thought about putting them out, we thought about a 10-to-1 ratio of gliders to a pilot, if you will, operating them. With some investments from some other folks, we've exceeded that. We are really doing true machine-to-machine piloting with a human on the loop, letting predictive ocean models and directions sort through the environment to pilot. So we're kind of leading in that area and doing very well with it. We do have to get better at close. There's a lot of things that we could do with machine-human teaming. It's part of what we're working on with PEOC4I and a lot of the forward system design. How do we do that better to reduce the amount of human in the loop and let the human be above, understand the data, and make the decisions in a different way, and let the machines talk to each other, because we're going to have to go there in the future.
Great. Yes, sir.
Gentlemen, Will McInerney, I'm with Naval Information Warfare Center Pacific. My question is directed mainly towards NIAV I-4 Commander Admiral Brown. Sir, I'm a long time out from being a repair locker officer, but I was wondering what your thoughts are on the requirements for a cyber repair locker capability and what that might look like both on the layer one, the actual physical layer rerouting. I could reroute power, I could reroute seawater as a repair officer locker, but I could not reroute my cyber connections. What are your thoughts on that for the shipboard and maybe the afloat and ashore community as we try to deal with the cyber fire, for lack of a better word, and containment to reroute our capability to continue mission?
Yeah, I understand where you're going on that. So I think there's a couple of things unpacked there. Number one is we are making investments across the Navy, and a lot of it goes into Rich's ships in terms of in AFCEA and NAVWAR working together to try to enumerate and understand what all of our shipboard systems look like and be able to understand that environment more holistically. The second thing going on within my organization is really trying to get after how we train ITs, right? The information technology specialists out there that are in the fleet, they're our largest force. And how we elevate them from the current training level that we're at, which is mainly focused at systems administration, patching, and those kind of basic functions, to a level of, if you will, damage control or defensive cyber operators out there that can really defend the network in a different way than they can today, using tools that are being baked into the systems that we're fielding that we don't leverage as well as we can. So that's a piece and part of what we're trying to do within the TICOM influencing it. I go back to that training piece, right? We have what we have. But I think if Admiral White was sitting here, who's kind of in charge of kind of the Dobie side of the things from a 10th Fleet Cyber Command perspective, and he's looking out across it, all the responsibility he has from ashore to afloat, because of the connection through the DoD information network and what he's charged to do, he would be right in line with you. And I think the first thing he would say is understand the systems we have and be able to sense them and use computers to help you manage that and the computational capability, and then also to retrain our workforce to be those DC men in the future, only defensive cyber as opposed to damage control.
Thank you, sir.
Tim Flynn, Intel Corporation, former SWO. This is really, I think, a SWO boss and air boss question. I get manning being your biggest of the man-true and equip challenges right now, but on the equip side, I'm concerned. China, over the last 12 months, received 23 service combatants that can shoot a total of 720 anti-ship missiles. The U.S. Navy, we got 9 ships. One of them is a Virginia-class submarine, an LCS, and then 7 DDGs, a few in that mix are Arleigh Burke, with limited anti-ship missiles. Can you talk about how the equip side is going to change? And I realize this is also air boss because you're the force multiplier on these 23 combatants, and what we're doing to mitigate that offset.
Well, we're once again in great power competition. And so, if we go into a major regional conflict, we're going to go into the fight with what we have. Right? That's all we can do. So my job is to make sure that ship is combat ready. We leave no redundancy at the pier. That's why we established a goal that we're going to deploy our ships casualty-free. It was said that we couldn't do it, right? Now, if you remember back in Rice University in September 1962, John F. Kennedy said we're going to go to the moon, do the other things, not because they're easy, because they're hard. That was a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal. So setting we're going to deploy our ships casualty-free was a big, hairy, audacious goal, but we achieved it. We've achieved it numerous times over the last number of years. As a matter of fact, I sent an entire strike group out casualty-free, and if we look at the next strike group that's going out, probably going to get pretty darn close to it. Right? So why does that matter? Well, maybe back after the Berlin Wall fell and the Soviet Union collapsed in the early 90s, where maybe we didn't have to sail with full redundancy on our ships. The mere fact that the United States Navy and our allied navies woke up in the morning, we had sea control. Just because we woke up, that's not the case in 2020. So, we have to be ready to fight tonight. I will still put one of our DDGs up against their DDGs any day of the week, and we'll win.
I would just add also that we need to be able to add to the fight. And that's one thing our Commandant's looking at is how we contribute to that exact fight that you brought up, to include, we're looking at buying naval strike missiles now, and to be able to put them on things that don't sink, to be able to contribute to that fight.
So maybe as a final question, as someone comes to the mic, for each of you guys, as you think this great power competition, in other words, we got varsity players to go against now, and we have to be ready. Not only on the equipping side that Tim just brought up, those things are in development, they get handed off to you at some point, but we are notorious as an institution for delivering equipment and capability with maybe not the equivalent sense of training to go with it. How do you guys plug into the system, both from an industry standpoint, but also through the requirements process? How do you plug in to make sure that something's delivered with the appropriate level of training in time, so that when it shows up in the fleet, you can employ it?
Well, we're plugging in through our, I'm not going to answer for Bullet, but through the Surface Warfare Enterprise. So it is an enterprise look at not only for the systems that we have today, but the systems that we're acquiring in the future. And so I then hold our resource sponsor, N95 and N96, accountable and responsible for not only programming the new systems, but also programming the training that is required for those new systems. I'm going to give you an example of how you can absolutely get it wrong. Back in 2003, when I had command of the Sullivans, your generators are controlled by this piece of equipment called a LOCOP, Local Operating Control Panel. And an AIT showed up at the pier. The AIT team was led by a guy named Chris, and he was going to replace all my LOCOPs with FADACs, Full Authority Digital Control Equipment Consoles. And it's the latest and greatest thing, and we loved it. And I asked Chris, I said, hey, who's going to train my GSEs on how to operate this piece of equipment? Oh, that will happen later in the schoolhouse. Fast forward to 2008, I have command of Gettysburg. Guess who shows up on the pier with my 3 new FADACs? And I grabbed him and I said, Chris, you lied to me. There is no training for my GSEs. Fast forward to 2012, I take command of SWAS, and I go up to Great Lakes, and we've just assumed responsibility for surface enlisted engineering training. There's not a single LOCOP left in the fleet. Not one. It's all FADACs. Guess what we're training up to in Great Lakes? LOCOPs. That's an example of how we get it absolutely wrong, and that's how we're not holding the acquisition community accountable for not only buying the new equipment, but buying the training that goes with it. And I do that now through the suite.
Yes, first off, we do it the same way, but I'll tell you it's critical. The worst thing we can do is all of a sudden do a software upgrade for an aircraft in the fleet and not have that same software in the simulators. So our ability to train with the equipment that we have in realistic environments is key. So how we plug into it is, as the community lead, it's we demand it. So, and I would rather have, if you will, tried, true and tried, tested tactics with equipment that I know, and all of a sudden getting something that either I can't maintain, I can't fight with, and so, keep that shiny object back at home. So it's key to how we move forward. We absolutely need to make sure that our maintainers know how to maintain the equipment that we have, our operators know how to employ it effectively, and then we have a full system that we can totally integrate.
And so my answer would be very similar to the Information Warfare Enterprise. We try to generate on behalf of the fleet the right kind of IW needs, if you will, to inform OPNAV and it does span both the N2, N6, and the N9, so we do that through our WIP process. And we have improved that over the last couple of years to get after it. We are tightening the timeline in discussion within the information warfare enterprise to align those things between the resource sponsor, the acquisition, and what's fielded in our training plans. We have a ways to go. Probably the most difficult thing for the information warfare side of the business is the technology changes really fast. It's relatively inexpensive, and people can get it, and they can feel it. And so we see all the time stuff going out to the fleet based on UONs, GONs, and other things that are just outside the normality of our system. They get to the fleet, they end up being a system generally either in one of their two platforms or ashore. We get one pump from a vendor, a couple guys trained, and then it starts to fall apart. So we are going systemically through the information warfare platform as we're defining it with NAVWAR and PEOC4I to be able to get to what I would say the discipline of the submarine community and how they treat their internal system. So it's a work in progress, but we have to get there and slow down on the ad hoc implementation without some kind of prototype or piloting way back to a program of record. So that's what we're working on.
Ours are very similar, sir, but I would just say one thing we're experimenting with, because we need to get a lot more agile on the training side. We're calling it training as a service. We found that whenever we own training systems to support equipment that we're buying, we have a tendency to hang on to it too long. We don't do tech refresh, information assurance well enough. So this training as a service is for things that we don't absolutely have to own, have somebody provide that service to us. We conduct the training that we need to do with it, and then it's somebody else's headache, especially as technology changes as quickly as it does. It's faster to change a contract than it is to acquire new systems.
All right, last question, go ahead.
Gentlemen, thank you for your time. I'm Nicole Magny, former Pentagon civilian, and now work for a cybersecurity company. And I was wondering, this is directed at any of you that would like to answer, I would appreciate a comment on Undersecretary Lord's CMMC initiative and how you all feel like that might affect the Navy's ability to equip at the speed of relevance, and also if there's any positives that you think might come out of that.
I didn't hear the question. Can you say that one more time?
Sorry. Undersecretary Lord's cybersecurity maturation model certification and how that might affect the Navy's ability to equip at the speed of relevance.
Well, that sounds like Vice Admiral Brown's going to answer it.
Yeah. You are Vice Admiral Brown.
That's good. Well, I think, and it's probably a better question for my Echelon folks, but as we look at the policies that are coming down from that level, and we are looking at how they affect the system's design, we're incorporating those things. Cybersecurity is one of those things we have to bake in, at the beginning of a program. We all suffer from bolt-on cybersecurity, and we are from the SysCom level to the PEO level. We're now starting to bake those things in. Her initiative, I don't think, is much far off from the other things we're trying to do under the NIST, trying to implement the NIST standards, the risk management framework, and other things. So it's just a natural progression, I think, as we move forward. But it should help us as a Navy, as a DoD, bake in the cybersecurity from the beginning so that we're not bolting it on. If that helps.
Thank you.
Thanks. Well, I'd like to thank the panel members for being up here, taking time out of your busy schedules to answer the questions and talk about things that are important to you. I think we kind of circled back kind of to where we began, which is if you're talking about competition and great power competition, speed and smarts matter. And we are not known for being speedy. We got a lot of smart people. And what I think you heard from these gents up here today is that the ability for us to speed up both the acquisition process, the requirements process, the delivery of training, and the ability to get our people trained to be effectively able to operate that new equipment, which is going to change if we're going to pace the threat, is critical to the future of the Navy. So, gents, thanks for being here, and the audience, thanks for participating.
On behalf of AFCEA International and the U.S. Naval Institute, I'd like to thank Admiral Moran, General Mullen, Admiral Brian Brown, Admiral Rich Brown, and the Air Boss. The TICOMs have a very tough job. The lead TICOMs have the additional community lead and culture accountability that is really unparalleled, and we truly appreciate your time, and thank you again. Let's give them another hand.
Good to see you. Yeah.